Meanwhile, Sid, for Barcelona, it is a big season. Hansi Flick presented as a new coach. They're very much rolling the dice, aren't they, after getting rid of Xavi. This is going to be such an interesting season in Catalonia for Joan Laporte and this Barcelona side, who also are going through a transition, but are just looking over their, well, not even looking over their shoulders, looking very much ahead of them at what Real Madrid are doing.
Yeah, of course. And the other thing, of course, is everything, as we've talked about this endlessly for the last 2 or 3 years now, everything is conditioned by the financial situation at Barcelona and to what extent they can bring in the players that they want. Now, they're pursuing Nico Williams. They believe that they can get him. They've been quite, I actually think quite, how would I put this, quite forward in saying that they believe that they can get him, and possibly that's annoyed a few people at Athletic, but ultimately if a player has a buyout clause and you believe you can meet it and you believe you can get an agreement with the player, then it's done. But Barcelona have other things that they need to sort out. Now that is where Flick comes in that he will define, I think, some of those positions they need to strengthen. He will define the kind of things that he wants the club to do. Now obviously the next question then becomes, as Xavi found out, can the club actually do those? Now, for what it's worth, and I've been arguing this for a year or so, I don't think there's too much wrong with Barcelona's best 11 players. The question is the strength in depth on 1 or 2 key positions. Deep midfield in particular is one of them. And so I think the question mark now is, how does Flick build a team to try and hide some of those weaknesses and try and strengthen those areas of the pitch where they really do have a lot of talent?
Nico Williams, of course, is the big shiny star, isn't it, Sid? Exactly what fans want. However, if I'm Hansi Flick, as you mentioned, coming in, you're looking at the frailties for last season. You're not necessarily looking at the final third. You're looking at those deep-lying midfielders. You're looking at the defence, which looks so vulnerable at times throughout the campaign.
Yeah, personally, I would argue you're looking at one other position as well, but I think this is a really interesting one. I think that other position is you're looking at the number 9.
Right.
And you're looking at what is it that you do with Robert Lewandowski. But of course, one of the reasons why Flick comes in, one of the many reasons, because I'm not going to reduce it to this, it would be deeply unfair, is that there is a sense that he has a belief in Lewandowski, that he can get the best out of him, and therefore Barcelona don't have that problem of what to do with their superstar. Then beyond that, as you say, you need to try and settle the defence and structure it and restructure the midfield. Now, because Flick, in theory at least, would play with 2 deep midfielders, perhaps he can build a structure that means even if he doesn't have that natural midfielder, that player that would be a Busquets or that would be a Zubimendi or that would be that deep line midfielder like a Rodri at Manchester City, if he doesn't have that, perhaps if he plays with a 2, he can hide that slight weakness and kind of protect them. And then, of course, the question about the defence is not just what can he add to the squad, but how much of this squad does he keep hold of? Because, of course, the one player that Barcelona believe they can get really good money for, and the player who is at least broadly open to the idea of a departure, is Ronald Araujo. So then you've got another question is, how do you structure that defence if your key central defender departs, on top of the fact that you already believe that maybe you need to strengthen across that line of 4 and in particular across the position just in front of it?
As you say, Sid, because of financial constraints, Barcelona have had to be careful about the players that they've brought in, which why you look at someone like Vitor Roque and think, how did they get this so wrong?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? It feels like there wasn't a clear idea of exactly what role he was going to play. And we were talking earlier about Endrick, and I mentioned Vitor Roque. When he came in, now, I don't want to put too much of the blame here on the club at a footballing level. Certainly not on Xavi, and certainly not on the sporting director, although there was definitely a disconnect between the sporting director and Xavi in terms of what role Vitor Roque was going to play. But because he came in at a difficult time, in marketing terms and in political terms, he was projected as the solution, and I think that put an extra pressure on him that he really didn't need. And I think now you look at this, after Xavi wasn't that keen on him, it looks like Flick is not entirely decided on what to do with him. And so you do have this problem, and you have this problem as a very young player, a very expensive player in whom you have invested a huge amount of money. And by the way, you brought his signing forward by 6 months because you felt that you needed him, and now you've got a player you think, how do we resolve this? How do we either get rid of him at a price that suits everyone or find a place for him within the team? And to be honest with you, at the moment, there really isn't one.
And let's go from one striker to another. Of course, Girona lit up, didn't they, La Liga last season. Dovbyk in particular catching the eye. Of course, up there in the Pichichi race for a lot of this season. His future very much up in the air. It looked like he was going to go to Atletico Madrid. However, his agent has come out and said Atletico are a great club, but we didn't see a serious project for Artem, and their economic offer is significantly inferior to the ones from other clubs interested in La Liga's best scorer. The other club seems to be Roma, Sid, who they look like he will be heading to, which is a bit of a surprise considering what Atleti could offer, need to offer maybe, considering obviously Morata's departed.
Yeah, it is a surprise, isn't it? Because for Atletico Madrid to be outbid by a big Premier League club wouldn't come as much of a shock. But for it to be Roma, with the greatest of respect to Roma, given Atletico's position in La Liga, maybe is a surprise. Now, it is true that beneath the surface, Atletico Madrid, if you look at the way that they've done their deals over the last 3 or 4 years, they have been trying to cut costs all the way through that. Across salaries, but also across the amount that they spend on transfers. They've been trying to recuperate more than they spend. And so it's not a huge surprise in that sense. There's a little bit of me, and I don't know if I'm being too cynical, Dan, in saying this, that when you take what Dovbyk's agent said, and you read, on one hand, they didn't give a project to him, on the other hand, they didn't offer very much money. Is he really talking about the same thing? Is his definition of project the salary wasn't big enough?
Yeah.
Rather than, I don't see a place for my player, I don't see a role within the team. Because the truth is, as you say, Alvaro Morata goes, it doesn't take a genius to see the project. The project is, we need a number 9, here's a really good number 9, this is Atletico Madrid, who in theory should be a good club, who have good players around him. That should be a good project, shouldn't it? And the fact that he mentioned money as well makes you think, is this purely about the size of the salary? And if so, and if Atletico Madrid are just being kind of financially prudent about it, then I guess the answer is, well, so be it. If we can't afford him, he doesn't come.
Yeah, project's a nice smokescreen, isn't it, Stevie? Most definitely.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's down to the money. 100%. Which again, isn't good for La Liga, because if they can't get Dovbyk, who do they get? And they absolutely need a centre-forward. And if they're not prepared to put their hand in their pocket, then they're going to end up with a substandard centre-forward.
Yep.
Or not what you need to win La Liga. So for Atletico Madrid fans, that's not good.
And meanwhile, for Atleti as well, suggestions are that Le Roman will be making the move to the Spanish capital. That is official in...